Welcome to Stoughton Media Access Cable. My name is Steve Kelley, and this is our Community Forum show. And today I have the pleasure to bring you Chief Michael Laracy from the Stoughton Fire Department. Welcome to the show, Chief.
Thank you, Steve.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
So the Chief, I think, would like to share some of the inner workings of the department and how it relates to all of people, business owners, et cetera, and the kind of things they do, starting with their emergency response and then moving on to code enforcement, things like that. So, Chief, before we get into all that good stuff, what made you want to become a fire person, a fire, however you want to call it?
Back in 1982, I was still a senior in high school.
Okay, you're giving away your age.
So one of my friends was on what they call the junior fire department.
Okay.
And he says to me, he says, you should be, look into it. And I did. So I started my career as a junior firefighter in 1982. Yep. Became a call firefighter in like 1983.
What community were you in?
Foxborough at that time.
Foxborough?
Yep.
Right next door.
Yep. And then in 1986, I was hired full-time. And I went to the Mass Fire Academy.
Wow.
Yep.
And how long is that process, the Fire Academy?
Currently right now it's 10 weeks. So it's a 10-week process. They go through all different types of skills. And it's really the basics of firefighting. And then you learn everything, how the department works when you get back. Okay, they teach you how they want it done. Yeah. And we build on those skills. This is how we work. This is our equipment.
Take us a little deeper though. What made you like to do that? I mean, obviously we have all these occupations. Why fire? You know what?
It was something I never thought of at the time. I never had a family member in the field. I'm the first.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that. I did have an uncle who was a call firefighter in the town of Walpole. And I remember being at cookouts, and the fire truck would go by the house. They'd have a call, and they'd stop, and he'd jump on the engine, which I thought was the neatest thing.
As a kid, sure.
But yeah, as a kid, and even with that, I really didn't. My career, my future didn't look towards firefighting, and it wasn't until I get on as a junior firefighter. And I get on. I liked what I was doing. As you're there longer, you can, when you first start, you don't go into a burning building. You're outside. Because of course, you're talking 17-year-old kid.
Yep.
So, and as you become call, now you're starting to go into the buildings. You're starting to do more. You're a more experienced call firefighter. You're driving the fire apparatus. You're pumping the water.
Right.
And then you just, I went and got my EMT. And like I said, it was in a matter of a few years I got hired full time.
So what is getting the EMT? So that people would know?
So emergency medical technician, so you can work on the ambulance. So the state requires that you have to be an EMT or a paramedic. So it depends on the service that the town runs. So we run at the paramedic level. So each one of our ambulances have a paramedic. So in 2000, the town I was working for, Foxborough still at the time, they wanted to go paramedic. They wanted to go ALS. And they sent 4 of us to school.
What ALS is.
So I'm sorry, so advanced life support.
Okay.
Okay, so when you're a paramedic, and I always tell people, you got to think about what these individuals can do on the ambulance. Okay, they're not in an ER where they have a whole team with them. So they have drugs in their drug box that one can slow a heart down if it's going too fast, increase the heart rate if it's going too slow. They can stop your heart rate if you're in a rhythm that eventually is going to, kill you.
Right.
So it resets your heart. And then they have drugs in their box that can start the heart.
So this must be a huge training. I mean, it's like you're a doctor. I mean,
It
on
is.
site.
So you do about a year of schooling, and then from there you do so many hours in the clinical setting in the hospital. So at the time when I did it, and I don't think it's changed too much, you rotate through a number of departments. And while you're in there, you get to go into the OR and what they call intubation, when you put a breathing tube down to help, we do that in the field. So you're actually doing that on real patients, under the guidance of obviously of a anesthesiologist or whatever. And you're placing the tubes, and you have to get so many in the hospital. You're in labor and delivery. They have you rotate, and most of your time spent in the ER.
So how many of those, that ALS level are on each ambulance? One and then an EMT?
So it has to have one minimum.
Yeah.
So we can run what they call a PB waiver, paramedic basic EMT, emergency medical technician. But most times there's 2.
Right.
Yep. Because everyone we hire now is a paramedic. So we probably have about 35 paramedics. And in Stoughton,
No, could you clarify paramedic versus?
so paramedics, so you have your different levels of EMT, emergency medical technician. You have the basic level, and then the next level is paramedic that we run by.
And they can do ALS?
They can do ALS.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's a two-level system?
It's a two-level system,
and you
two-tiered
encourage
system.
them to move up to try to get
Yep,
more.
so we, the individuals we hire now are actually coming out with their paramedic. So when we hire someone through civil service, we call for not only a list for a firefighter, but that individual has to be a paramedic as well.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Very well equipped then.
Yeah, they're coming in equipped. At that, when they do come in, I mean, we look at it, that saves the town a lot of money by having someone already come in and train. Because if you hire a firefighter and then you send them to school for a year, you're covering them for a year.
Yep.
It's pretty much a year and a half.
Yep.
And you're paying all the expenses, and you're paying for the course, which is about $10,000 plus right now. So that's what a lot of towns are doing now. Anyone that really wants to be a firefighter, I encourage you, get your EMT, take the civil service exam,
Yep.
and and go and become a
Try to get the
paramedic.
paramedic. So
Yep.
EMT, civil service, and paramedic.
Yep.
So
So
invest the time. So what about a college? Is there a college that's doing that?
well, a lot of colleges have fire science degrees. But a lot of colleges now, through this, because of the state with their requirements, is these paramedic programs have to be affiliated with a college, and a lot of them are with community college.
I see.
So as you get your paramedic, you may come out with, I don't know, say 30 credits towards a degree.
Right.
But the programs now have to be affiliated with a higher education. So you can see all these times. Yeah, it's it keeps advancing the level.
Right. So could you tell us a time when you really got to employ those skills that you have, like on a call? Well, obviously not a specific with the name, but like just, do you remember from like, I got a call once and that happened? So tell me about that.
Oh yeah, when I was going through paramedic school, you need so many skills. So like I told you, you go to school for a year, you go to clinical setting, and then you have to ride with like a fire department or a private ambulance, and you have to get so many patient contacts. So even going through school, some of the things we see a lot of things. So I mean, you were intubating, you were doing everything that you were taught in school. So when you actually go for your certification, for your license, for your testing, I mean, you've already done most of those skills.
Right.
So I mean, I've seen some horrific things in my life and some really good things.
Yeah, I'm thinking more when you save somebody and you felt that you really had picked the right place to be for a career.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, most of my career was spent at the lower basic level of EMT.
Yep.
And what I found a lot of times is, we'd have people, we didn't know how, we couldn't shock, we didn't have the defibrillators, we didn't have the drug box because we were basic EMTs. And, in the ambulance, you would see people pass away before you. And there wasn't much you could do other than CPR. And, then when you saw the paramedics come on board, it was a different story. If someone went into cardiac arrest in front of you, there's a possibility that you could bring them back.
Right.
And that, I think, is really when you saw the value of your training, of being a paramedic.
Right.
So much more you can do. So I don't have an exact example. I mean, I've just, all I could say is, the skills that we were taught were put quickly into place on calls.
Very good.
Yeah.
So let's sort of break away from that. And so thanks for sharing. That's sort of what got you into the firework and stuff. And you worked in Foxborough on the line, let's say.
Yep.
And then how did you move up?
So I was in Foxborough for 19 years full time. I think 23 altogether with my call time. I was a captain at the time when I left, and I took a job in the neighboring town of Walpole. They were looking for a deputy chief.
Yep.
So it was a competitive, process. I got chosen, and I spent 11 years there as deputy chief before coming to Stoughton.
So you have the experience as a captain in Foxborough, a deputy over in Walpole, and now you can put all those various departments, take the good with you, and
absolutely, it brought me to this level here in Stoughton. I mean, it's not too many chiefs could say that they were. I went from firefighter to captain, firefighter, paramedic, captain, then deputy chief up. So I mean, So basically what I'm saying is not a lot of chiefs have had that paramedic experience.
Oh,
And I think it's important as a fire chief because when you're running, paramedic level service, you need to understand it. You know, the state requirements,
Yes.
the licenses, just everything about it, the equipment,
yep.
the cost of running such a system.
When you own your own business too, by the way, so the idea is
Yeah.
you never ask someone to do something that you wouldn't do.
Yeah.
And it helps that you could do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and that's basically what got me here.
Wonderful.
So that's 31 years now in the fire service.
So in addition to the emergency work that you are talking about
Yeah.
here, the EMT work, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys also do some code enforcement. Talk to us a
Yeah,
little
and that's
about
really why I'm
code.
here today because, when people think of the fire department, they're thinking, fire responses, fire incidents. And that could be anything from an actual fire to responding to an oil burner problem to anything. People call us for everything.
Right.
If it's not like a medical call, then everything else is fire.
Let me
So
ask
we
you
have
a
the two
question that
categories.
just came to mind.
Yep.
Should they call you first or the police first or just it's already done for them? I'm not used to that kind of a phone call.
Well,
but
that's
talk to
actually a
me
good
about that.
question because recently in November 2017, we went central dispatch. So 911 calls go into central dispatch.
Which means,
So which means the police department will answer the call.
Yep.
Before, they used to, if it was a fire or a medical, they'd transfer it over to Station 1 at the fire department. So
Okay.
there'd be that delay, slight delay, so they'd transfer the call over there. But now they're all working together. So they're
Right.
all getting the same call. They're all being dispatched. If it's an incident that we need the police there, they respond with us.
okay,
If not, so now it's just so much more efficient system. We're still tweaking it. Like I said, we've done dispatching over at the fire department for a number of years, and then we combine police and fire. So there's the adjustment that you would,
right.
like I tell our dispatches, I call them institutionalized. It's all they ever known. They've worked at Station 1.
Yep.
That's all they've ever known. They're working with equipment that was, probably from the 60s.
Right.
You
The
know,
call equipment, you're talking about the reception
The
equipment.
reception, the radio equipment, the fire alarm equipment, the boxes that come in,
Yep.
just everything, the consoles. And they come over to the central dispatch, and even with the police, and a lot of their stuff is now on the screens. So you click on a screen, on an icon, and it opens up a radio, and they're talking.
Right.
So, I mean, that's just modern dispatching now.
Yep.
And like I said, they got to get used to all that new equipment, working in a new place, under a different department, because they fall under the police department. So I give all the dispatchers, but especially the fire dispatchers, a lot of credit for
Yeah.
this move. They do an exceptional job. They're a great core of individuals, and the town should be proud of all of them.
Yeah, and
Very well
and
trained.
I was going to say, and it's got to be like, I'm thinking scary to receive calls that are life-threatening and.
It is.
and
I mean,
things,
because they're the first line of defense.
Yeah, you got to make sure
They,
that
they
you-
set everything.
right.
They set everything in motion.
I mean, I'm thinking in this interview, whatever I've sort of done wrong or could do wrong,
Yeah.
it's not life-threatening.
Mhm.
So that when you're on the end of a life-threatening call, it must be, I'm trying to think of the right word, it's got to be something that's really like waiting on you.
Absolutely. And it's
Do it
just
right.
it's just so and like I said, they put everything in motion. If they don't make the adequate response,
Yep.
then it's just delays everything, or it just could turn everything around. If they need a police officer there first, but they don't send a police officer, and we get there and say it's a, I don't know, say some type of
A combination domestic with
domestic,
with
with,
injuries,
with injuries,
Yeah.
and it's not safe for us to go in. But if the police aren't getting there first or right away, we can't be walking into a situation. So
Yeah, you're unarmed, yeah.
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, and they do a great job.
Right.
So.
Good.
So, here, we talk about, like I was saying, people see, think about the fire department, we respond, medicals, we respond to fires. But we have a huge code compliant, portion of what we do. Code enforcement, permits. And I really wanted to come on today just to explain a little bit about that.
Well,
of
let's
everything
start
we
with a
do.
new house. If someone's going to build a new house, so
Yep.
let's start with how are you guys involved in the code for a new house?
So someone wants to build a new house. So the first thing they got to do is they have to start with the building department. and the building department will approve them, give them the okay, whether it's zoned for that. It's a buildable lot.
Yep.
So it starts from there. So from there, the building department sends them over to the fire department, the contractor or the developer.
Yep.
We take a look at the plans, and just with with just a regular house, we're really only talking about fire alarm system, like smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors.
Right.
And we stamp those plans.
And with the little like smoke symbol, and then in which room or which hallway where you want
exactly.
it. And it's in red. I remember from
Yeah,
I've done this.
yeah,
so
and we do.
You
Yeah,
stamp it out.
we do
and say,
that.
this is what we're looking for.
And we give our approval. I mean, plans are supposed to come through with the architects with those, with where the smokes are and all that. And we're supposed to really be approving it. But sometimes we get them where, they're not correct.
Yeah, you might want them in a different place.
We want them in a
Yep.
different location.
Yeah, different departments might be different too.
Yeah, and it's a thing, and that's what gets frustrating for some contractors that, I'll go to this town and they said, I want this.
Yeah.
To me, and I've been doing code enforcement in the code books throughout my whole career. It's just a part of the job I really like, keeping up on the codes, doing the research. And I could see where they'd be frustrated because the code requirements are code requirements.
So which code, by the way, because you have 2 or 3 that you're working with, right?
Yep, so we basically, we have the comprehensive, and I got a Massachusetts Comprehensive Fire Safety Code.
Okay,
So
that's
basically,
one book.
That is the one book here, this one
Pull
book.
it up if you would,
Yeah,
just so
if I
people
will.
could get an idea.
Yep, let me grab this.
So this
without
is Mass Comprehensive Fire Code.
Yep, so this is basically our code for the fire service.
Right.
Right here. So this here has all our permit requirements.
Okay.
This code here for the first time because Massachusetts always had their standalone fire safety code. 2 years ago, they actually adopted NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association
And
code.
Did they join them, sort of?
Yep, so what they did is they adopted NFPA 1. Okay, NFPA has hundreds of standards and codes. This is really the authoritative, the administrative code of NFPA. So what they did is they took the fire codes that they had, the comprehensive, the CMRs of Massachusetts.
Code of Massachusetts
Code of
Regulations.
yeah, and I was trying to think.
Yep.
Very good, Steve. Yep. And they had CMR 527, Chapter 148. That's where we get all our fire codes. That's
And
where
does
we.
that determine like what sort of call staffing you have, or that's
No,
something
not for
independent?
this.
Okay.
Not for that. I mean, NFPA has their own standard on staffing.
Okay.
We talked about last time I was on. We went for the SAFER grant. For staffing of additional. It's a grant that allows us additional personnel to staff.
Right.
And that's based on the standard of staff and what should a community our size, square mileage, population, the number of calls have on for firefighters.
Right.
And we ended up getting that grant
nice.
to allow us to get 8 firefighters. And it's a 3-year grant that the federal government pays 75% the first 2 years of both salaries and benefits. And then it's offset on the other side, on the 3rd year, where the town's starting to pick up most of it. And then we own those individuals moving forward. So you only get that grant if they feel, the federal government and those reviewing the grant, that there's a need.
Right.
So you got to write a great grant. We got it, which says a lot. It also says that people outside of this town, across the country, looking at our application are saying, you're understaffed. And
Right.
this allows the town to hire and have the federal government support that. So that's a standard, but not under this. So
Okay,
we don't talk about
that's the Code
staffing.
of Mass.
This is just strictly Massachusetts. So what
Massachusetts.
they do is they adopt NFPA 1 and they put all their amendments in here from Massachusetts.
Good.
And so the code doesn't change too much, but we have adopted that for the first time, NFPA.
All right. So
Okay.
you have to comply. What sort of things are you looking to comply with within that?
So within
code?
that, a lot of this is permanent. Okay, what requires a permit? What permit you're going to use, and then it identifies, what the applicant has to meet.
So give us an example. You got propane tanks.
So yeah,
I mean, what
we
sort
could
of
do.
things?
So let's go like oil burners.
Okay.
So in here we have to with fire department permits all oil burners, whether
So
it's
we're not plumbing. It's
no, it's strictly falls under the Department of Fire Services.
okay.
So plumbing is totally different because what it is, it's dealing with oil.
So you have to go in and physically inspect any new.
Absolutely.
Any new burner installations.
Any new oil
And you
burner.
want to make sure there's a fire thing for the oil, what do they call that?
They got the Firematic fusible link.
Firematic, fusible links.
Yep, and
Things
yep,
like that.
we got to make sure. Yeah, so, but you know, when it's strictly oil, we're responsible for oil. So if the boiler, the furnace is fed by oil,
Yep.
we're inspecting it. If it's fed by gas, plumbing inspector.
Gas or propane. So
Gas or propane, absolutely. But when you get in, and that's when we start working with different partners, because even with propane, all the gas piping to that burner is the plumbing inspector. But the propane tank sitting outside is the fire department.
So you've got to establish regulations. Do you talk about the pad size that's needed for a propane
Yeah,
tank?
it's got to be on a firm foundation. It can't be within so many feet of a window. It has to be like so many, you know, for the ventilation, because, you know, if it vents.
Right.
It's got to be protected. You know,
Right.
it depends where it is, you know, around the home.
Bollards, like those
Yeah,
steel,
bollards, if it-
concrete-filled steel tubes
Yeah, if
around
it's in,
the tank.
absolutely, depends where the tanks are.
Yeah.
Especially more so on the commercial applications, we're looking for the bollards.
Right.
For the vehicle impact protection, because we don't want anyone hitting them. So that's a great example of, you know, of the partnership, working with another department to make sure there's code compliance. So we can't sign off on a propane tank if the plumbing inspector hasn't signed off on the piping, or vice versa. You know, if they get there first,
Yep.
you know, they want to make sure that we have signed off.
Let's segue over to other ways that you guys interact with the town in other ways. And I'm thinking planning. So if you're going to put a building in,
Yep, that's
there are things that have to be, like, it's got to have some sort of access for the fire department in case they need to get in. So what kind of
so we'll
things
start
with the planning board do you do?
So yeah, good. 'Cause I was going to say we'll start with a project. Someone wants to come into town. They want to put in a new building.
Like an IKEA or something?
Say
or
an
whatever.
IKEA. So they start with the planning board.
Yep.
Okay. If they find, well, you know, if they find that, you know, they need certain variances, they go to the Board of Appeals first. But they start with the planning board, and what the planning board does is they reach out to all departments for comments. So we're part of the site plan review. So when we look at IKEA, what we're looking at is when they first say, we're using IKEA as an example, when they first come in, we're looking at the site plan. We're really not looking at the building. I mean, we got the footprint of the building. It will tell us the size. And from the size, we know exactly what's going to be required for fire protection. But on the site plan, we're looking for fire department access. Do we have the turn-in radiuses? Can we get around the building? You
Right.
know, the code requires that, you know, we can get to two sides. You know, can we
I
get
didn't
to
know
two
that,
sides?
by the way. So it's
Yeah, in certain
sides.
certain buildings, yep, that we
Yeah.
can get to two. So we don't
Yep.
need 360-degree access. But on certain type of you know, occupancies, and we'll talk about them, you know, two.
Okay.
As long as we can get to two.
interesting.
Yep.
So I like to always learn some
Yeah.
new stuff. when we
Yeah,
have
and
it.
then we're looking at the site plan, and we're looking at hydrant locations. You know,
Okay.
where are the hydrants?
How many feet do they have to be from a building?
Well, there's no set distance from a building, but what we don't want is, because if we're tying into a hydrant, we don't want it against the building. Because if we got to pull the fire truck beside it and the building's on fire, we don't want to be in that collapse zone. So we have it somewhat of a distance away, and we also like hydrants. So minimum is about 400 feet. You know, depending
You
on
don't want to be any farther away than 400.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've got to run hose to a shootable location, let's say.
We got to run hose. I mean, we carry about 900 feet on each apparatus, so we can pick up. When you think about a street and you see the hydrants, we can pull up with a fire truck and drop 900 feet of hose. Okay, if it's further away, the next fire truck comes in and connects to that and drops another 900. You know what I mean? We just continue on that we need. But
Yeah, if you need to, but certainly in a winter situation with snow.
especially when you're picking it up.
Boy.
Yeah, that's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, also too, on these buildings, we have fire department connections. So we can feed the sprinkler system. So what we want to make sure we have too is a hydrant close enough. So the hydrant will feed the fire truck will feed the system.
Right.
So you want to make sure they're in the same areas. So we look
Why
at
do you
stuff
need
like
that?
that.
In other words, if you've got a sprinkler system, it's already connected to a like a town source.
So let's just say the town source is providing water pressure at 60 pounds.
Okay.
Okay, but you need more pressure. Say you get a bigger building.
Something's blown out in one spot, for instance, like if a pipe got knocked out, that would
Right.
drop the pressure tremendously.
It would drop the pressure. You know, when a sprinkler head's going off, it drops the pressure. But we want to be able to, if we have to do long hose lays inside the building, or if we have to go up a couple floors, as you go up floors, you lose pressure with the friction loss
Okay.
in the water. So the pump, the fire truck will allow us to increase the pressure to what we want. What we really want out of a nozzle coming out is like 100 pounds pressure. So it gives us the distance, so you know we don't have to get right up to a fire. We can shoot it from
100 pounds pressure. Now, I'm just trying to envision. So is that, could you envision that as like I'm not sure pushing 100 pounds gives me the, like if I took a 100-pound thing and pushed it, it doesn't really let me capture. When I think of a fire hose, it's like, bah!
It's
So-
exactly like that. You know,
So I don't think I quite understand that 100 pounds pressure. It seems more like 1,000 pounds with water. So
no, I mean, we can regulate how much pressure is coming out of the nozzles. So like I said, you know, if it's coming in at 60 into the truck from the hydrant,
yep.
we can increase that to 100. So when you got 100 pounds coming out of a nozzle,
And how big is the orifice on these hoses?
you know, it's hard to tell because the minimum size hose that we use is 1 3/4. Okay, and on top of that, we put down the nozzle, which obviously restricts it because it gives you a spray pattern that you want.
Right.
You know, whether you want like a fog pattern that has a wider pattern,
Right.
or a straight stream if you need to reach something in a distance.
Right.
So I don't know exactly what that is,
Okay.
but the hose itself is 1 3/4, which
Right.
which can supply up to 150 gallons per minute on that size hose.
Per minute. Yeah.
Right. If we get bigger fires, we bring in 2.5-inch hose, which can supply 250 gallons per minute. Gallons, not pressure.
Yeah,
Because no
gallons
one
per
could
minute.
hold a nozzle at 250
So
psi.
it is that much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, you know, you start getting over 100 pounds pressure on a nozzle, you need a couple firefighters on the line. You know, if you need to increase it more, I mean, you 2.5-inch hose lines.
It's throwing you back at the
It
same time as it's
yeah,
coming out.
and if you lose your footing, it's going to send you flying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's, you know, a hose that's just going crazy in the air, you know, is very dangerous, obviously, because
Right.
if it hits you.
Wow.
Yep. So with the site plan, I mean, those are things we're looking at.
Yep.
In the same time, we're looking at the footprint of this building, and we're saying, because we want the contractor to know right away that you're going to need a sprinkler system. Okay? You're going to need to do
And that's with 7,500 feet or more
7,500 square feet.
square feet?
Yep.
7,500.
And that's based on occupancy use group can change that too. So if you have an assembly use group, like for a nightclub.
So assembly means what to a person that's just sort of interested
So
in the
for an assembly, and when we get to it, you're coming in off the street to go to a bar.
Okay.
You're coming in to go to a nightclub. You're
Okay.
coming in to go to a theater. So it's like an assembly.
So people assemble
They
for something.
assemble
So
to
they call it an
something for whatever
assembly.
reason it
An
is.
assembly design is
Exactly.
a design that's more for people to congregate. Okay.
Absolutely. Good.
All right.
Yep.
So,
you know, one of the things we want to ask the contractors is, you know, they have to do, when they design the sprinkler system, okay, once they design it, it will tell them how much pressure they need for that, to run that system.
when you say we're talking about an engineer, a
the
specialist,
engineers, the
a
architects.
special engineer who does
Yeah, like
fire
the,
suppression systems.
fire protection
Yeah,
engineers.
yeah.
So they design this system, and we'll go back to IKEA, and they say, okay, you know, they do it on so many heads going off at one time. That's how they design it in certain sections.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just say that they need 90 pounds pressure to be efficient to put that fire out, to supply that, you know, sprinkler system. But we only have 60 pounds coming in. Right away, we know that they're going to need a fire pump,
Okay.
or they may need a storage tank. So these are all things that we're thinking about in the site plan. But we're letting them know you're going to need a sprinkler system. Do the hydrant flow test. You know, it has to be done within so many months. I think it's like 9 months, because you can't take hydrant flow tests that are like 3 years old, because
Right.
things have changed. You know, the scale on the pipes in the roads have built up. It may reduce your pressure.
Right.
So these are all things we find in the site plan, and that's our first view of the of the project,
Right.
in our first say. So it goes through the site plan process, the planning board approves it, That's when they go to the building department, they start taking out their building permits.
So wet and dry systems, do they still allow dry under new
Yeah.
construction?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yep. And a wet and dry system basically means that all the sprinkler piping in your building, if it's a wet system, if it's, all the pipes have water in them, no
Already.
matter where they are.
right.
Yep. Where on a dry system, the pipes do not have water in them
Until,
until the flapper valve in the main riser, it's called for. A
it
sprinkler.
reacts to the pressure loss.
So, yep, so the sprinkler head goes off.
Yep.
Okay, so instead of having water in all those pipes, there's air. Okay, the air holds back the water at the main riser, at the flapper.
Right.
So here you have water coming in from the street.
Yep.
Above this you have air.
Air pressure.
And it's holding
Pressurized
down a flapper.
When that
Yep.
pressure releases, it
Yep.
pops
So when
the
that head
flapper up.
Yep. So when that head goes off, wherever it is,
Yep.
it releases the air and opens up the flapper,
And then
and
the
then
water
the water
rushes
goes
to the- through the
goes
pipe.
to that sprinkler head.
Right.
And you'll see dry systems in areas that it could like a storage facility
Yeah,
that could
warehouse
freeze.
space and things.
That it could
yeah.
freeze.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. Good.
So like I said, now so we have that project IKEA, still using them as an example. They come in with their building code, their building permit, and now we move to where it's new construction. We go to the commercial building code.
Ah,
Okay, right here.
so it's another whole
It's
code
totally
set.
different because
Okay.
it's new construction, and the commercial building code is strictly new construction.
Now, who in your department makes those inspections?
So the deputy will sit down with the plans and myself,
Okay.
and we'll have the contractor in, the
Mm-hmm.
architect, and we go over exactly what we go over their plans with them,
Yep.
and what they actually need for that system.
Right.
And once they do that, once they start and we approve it, we stamp their plans.
And you don't get a building permit, I can tell you from experience.
You don't.
Until you have stamp plans from the fire
Right.
department.
Yep.
That's the first thing they say, okay, you got your architectural plans,
Yeah,
go get
we're-
them stamped.
We're pretty much the first stop,
Yeah.
to go to the fire department.
If you don't
Yeah.
get them stamped there, we
Yeah,
don't.
we
they
do a
don't-
plan review,
Yep.
and then they go back to the building department with our stamped plans, and then they start their permit process. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a pretty, I've heard of towns where building departments and fire departments have not worked well together. And every single town I've worked into, that has not been the case, and I don't see how it can't be, because you need that coordination.
Yes, you do, yeah.
You need it. Like Section 9 of the Commercial Building Code is all fire protection. And that's what we're looking at when they come over to see us. So I'll use that as an example. So they come in with a new building.
By the way, I just want to interrupt to the audience.
Yep.
I just want to tell them, Section 9, we're going to have a test at the end of the show, so you better be taking good notes.
Yep.
And we're going to ask you, what section was that? Chapter 146,
Yep.
right?
Chapter 148 of the Fire
148
Codes,
of the Fire
527.
Code.
See, and that just tells you everything we have to look at.
So you're
It's just
getting
so
a sense
involved.
and thank you for
there's
that.
there's
I
a
think
lot to it.
people probably can appreciate more the difficulty in ensuring or assuring fire safety,
Yep.
and how much compliance can make that better as we move forward in buildings, as we build them better and
Yeah.
more to code. But that puts
Right.
quite a burden. But I mean, we pay you for that burden, but puts
Yep.
quite a task in front of you, I would say.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because it's as we go through, we take an assembly use group. Well, let's say the contractor comes in. What use group is it? The architect has to identify it, whether it's educational,
Yep.
whether it's assembly, whether it's
Church.
residential.
Yep.
The church will fall under assembly. You got your storage. That has to be there because that tells us. Okay, so we go to section, chapter 9. We go to the section on, say, assembly.
Right?
We find out assembly has like four different subcategories, which ones it falls into, and then we go through the code book. Does it require a fire alarm system? Absolutely. Does it require an automatic fire alarm system? So you don't have to do anything; it's automatic. Smoke detectors, whatever.
Yeah.
Does it require a sprinkler system? Yes, yes or no. We'll sit down with the contractor, and they're coming in and they know this.
Yeah. And then
But-
there's the next step too about alarm monitoring. So maybe you could touch
Yeah,
a little bit on
so
that.
under the NFPA, another standard, the fire alarm code.
Yep.
Okay, when you have a fire alarm system or a sprinkler system, it has to be monitored.
Right.
And there's three different options that the property owner, developer can utilize. They can tie it right into us through what we call a radio alarm box. And they have a box on the system. When it trips, through the radio waves, frequency, wireless, it reports into central alarm, central dispatch.
Right.
And it tells us automatically where the building is. They can do that. Okay. There's obviously a cost for that equipment to install it up front.
Right.
Okay. Or they can go to a central alarm monitoring company like an ADT or anything else like that.
Right.
And they pay a monthly fee. So when the alarms come in, they don't come right into the fire department. They go into that central alarm monitoring station.
Right.
Who at that time they notify the fire department.
Right.
So now it's 2 steps. Building alarm goes off, goes to central alarm monitoring, comes to the central dispatch.
Right.
Okay, then to the fire department. So you could even say 3,
Right.
where the radio alarm box comes in directly. So you eliminate a step. But that's whatever the property owner wants. We can't mandate what they do.
Right.
Okay, and another option too that you never see, unless you're maybe at a huge facility that has their own security. If the fire alarm goes into a central monitoring station, security station or something within the building,
Oh,
and then they make the call.
that's a big building that does that.
That's big, and then you staff and someone has to be there,
Right.
to make sure that they see what's coming in, and then they notify us.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are your options.
Good.
Yep.
All right, so alarm monitoring is something that you're paying a lot of attention to. You've got to
Absolutely.
make sure that it's tested. And what about existing buildings? How often do you test those?
So we don't do any testing. We do inspections.
Okay.
So for a building that has a sprinkler system, okay, at a minimum, they have to test that sprinkler system annually, once a year. Okay, depending on the type of system they have, it may be quarterly, depending on the use group, the occupancy type.
Right.
If you have a fire alarm system, that's annually too. Some of the other things that we look for is kitchen fire suppression system. So if you have a
In
restaurant,
restaurants, you're talking about, yeah?
so now you add another layer of fire protection. So you have the kitchen suppression, which is a chemical.
Ansel, is that?
Ansel is a name of one of them, and there's different names. But yeah, we call it an Ansel system. So you have little nozzles above the stoves, above the cooktops, the fryer-laters, that if it's activated, they have like a fusible link wire. So if that's activated, if there's a fire and the heat gets too much, that link breaks,
Right.
and it sets off that system. And depending on the system you have, once it releases, all that powder goes everywhere. Okay, and that shuts down the kitchen right away. Okay, and then we have to bring in the Board of Health, because any food that was in that room, okay, now
Contaminated, yeah.
you're talking about an atomized powder all over the place. It gets over everything. It's gone. They lose all that food, and they're shutting down for a number of hours until they clean up. So that's one of the things they look at. What's kind of new, probably in the last 5 years, is kitchen hood cleaning. You have to be certified to do that. So depending on how much cooking you're doing,
Right.
the grease that you're generating, you could be doing hood cleaning at, say, monthly intervals,
Yeah.
and that's not cheap.
Yeah.
So it depends on, like, sir, I'll give you an example of someone that might have to do it monthly. Is like a Chinese food restaurant.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
a lot of grease.
A lot of grease buildup.
Yeah.
Or you get another restaurant that may have to do it quarterly.
Like chicken that was grease,
Absolutely.
fried Kentucky Fried Chicken, let's call it. Or
Yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
As opposed to whoever chicken, but yeah.
Right, so that will determine how often you have to do it. So that's another system we're responsible for. But we don't do any of the testing. We make sure the testing is done.
Right.
So we go out, we'll do an inspection of a business, and those are the things we want to see. We want to see when the sprinkler system was tested. When was the fire alarm test,
So you
tested?
send like either the deputy or lieutenant?
Yep, so what we do is we have a fire prevention officer who works full-time, and he'll go out and do some of those inspections. We also have a special program, we call it the FP2, Fire Prevention 2. We have inspectors, firefighters come in that will go into the businesses, and they'll look at all this stuff for us, and they'll generate reports. So we have them come in 2 or 3 times a week for only like 4 hours at a time. So we have funding for that. So that has allowed us to get into a lot of buildings, which we weren't getting into.
And it's important because you want to make sure that that there are fire extinguishers where they should be at the doors.
Absolutely.
You want to make sure that the alarm stations work near the doors.
Yeah,
all these sorts of things.
Yeah, we'll walk into buildings and the fire alarm system will be down. I mean, all we got to do is look at the panel and we know right away. It's like, whoa, sprinkler systems that may not have been inspected for a few years. And with us, it's not with us, I mean, but when we see this, I mean, the liability is not on us if it's not done. It's on the property owner. And we try to stress that to them. God forbid something happened in this building and your sprinkler system didn't work like it was supposed to.
Yeah, let's use that as a stepping point for talking about how sort of terrible fire incidents change the code. And,
sure. That's
you could tell me, like, was it Coconut Grove? Do I remember something like that?
Yeah, Coconut Grove in 1942, Coconut Grove fire, and I have it right
where is
here.
That, by the way?
What's that?
Where was Coconut Grove? Is that in Florida or
Boston.
something? In Boston? See, I
Yeah,
don't even know.
so it was in Boston.
It's behind before my
in
time.
1942, 492 people died. So basically that was a nightclub. So what happened there is, the story is, a flammable, a decoration caught on fire, whether it was from a candle or not, okay? And the people couldn't escape because they didn't have proper exits. So what they had, I think, is, and I'm trying to think of the actual term of the door that, turns on, what are they?
Revolving door?
Like a revolving door. And, people got stuck because, they're all trying to get out in a panic. So because of fires like that, and a lot of our code changes, all of our new codes come from significant fires. Coconut Grove back in 1942, assembly use groups, because it's a nightclub, it's an assembly. Can't have flammable decorations. Can't have actual candles, lit candles.
What happened with the station fire? Wasn't that
So in Warwick, the station nightclub
flammable
fire.
decoration or something, or no?
Well, yeah, I mean, they had pyrotechnics inside the building.
But those by themselves wouldn't cause the problem, right?
Well, what they had is they had the walls, at least around the stage, they had like foam on them. And the foam,
So it wasn't decoration, it was building product.
that one was building product. It was probably like a little bit of soundproofing for the foam. Mm-hmm. But like foam is made by fuel. It's hydrocarbons. And once that caught on fire, you just can imagine that foam burning, the black, thick smoke. People at first didn't realize, they thought it was part of the show until, if you ever see pictures of it, it had a low ceiling. So once that fire reached the ceiling, started traveling across and started banking down, and those people went into panic mode.
What does it mean to bank down?
So the reason why we have smoke detectors on ceilings is because when there's a fire, when there's smoke rises.
Because it's warm.
Yep. So it goes to the highest point in the room.
Okay.
And once it gets to the highest point in the room, say it covers the whole room, the ceiling, it has no place to go, because as the smoke continues, because the fire is still burning, the smoke continues to bank down in the room.
Okay, so it's like it's filled the bank,
It's filled the room.
The bank grows, if you would. It has to spill out and downward.
Yeah, it has nowhere else to
Banking
go,
down.
so it starts coming down. We call it banking down from the ceiling.
All right.
Okay, when we teach the kids in the schools to, if there's a fire in the house, smoke, crawl low, get on your knees, crawl out. Why? Because that's where your fresh air is. Because as it's coming down, your fresh air is at the bottom near the floor.
Right.
And it gives you time to escape. So that, with the nightclub there, they had, I'm trying to think, I don't have the number of people, I know it was at least 100 people, it was close. It was a lot of people who, perished that day.
Yeah.
And the building didn't have sprinkler system. So right away, the fire codes changed in Rhode Island, okay? And as a result of that, the trickle-down effect is, it came down to Massachusetts, and 2004 had the Acts of 304. Basically, it says that any assembly that's determined to be a nightclub, okay, requires a sprinkler system. Okay, it doesn't matter. We talked about 7,500 square feet that triggers most sprinkler system. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
100 or more people, or I think it's actually 50 or more. If it's designated by the building department as a nightclub, what's a nightclub mean? It has low lighting. It has an elevated stage. It has a band. It's not just one person on a guitar. It doesn't have adequate number of exits, let's just say. like I said, and there's music playing that you might not hear the fire alarm system. Sprinkler systems. So a lot of businesses after that had to put in sprinkler systems. Okay, and that's a good, leeway into another topic I want to talk about is we deal a lot with buildings at what we call pre-existing non-conforming.
Right.
Okay, you walk into a building and it's well over 7,500 square feet. Why isn't this building sprinkled? Well, it's not sprinkled because when it was built, when it was permitted, at that time, what did the code require? If it didn't require a sprinkler system, we cannot make them do that.
Pre-existing non-conforming.
Pre-existing non-conforming. We run into a lot of businesses like that. It gets a little frustrating, but that's the code is the code at the time.
Right.
And just because the code changes, you can't go back on businesses and make them upgrade. You
Right.
just the expense would be unbelievable. But in cases like this, you can go back to buildings, because they incorporate
It's a
new
nightclub,
laws.
yeah.
And now it's like if you have this type of building, you have to do it.
Right.
And it's not cheap, but it's an expense that they put on that building. Other big fires, the Great Chicago Fire, 1871, because of that, a lot of the city of Chicago had burnt. We have Fire Prevention Week in every October.
Because of that.
Because of that awareness of fire prevention. We want people to understand, that's the time of year where we say, okay, this is Fire Prevention Week. We get into the schools, we have our annual open house at the fire department. And whatever the theme is that year, we go over it. So whether it's, have an escape plan out of your house, no two ways out. That's our focus for that year. Every year it's different, and that's through NFPA.
Do you know, I have 2 children living in my house, and we haven't gone over that, and I think I probably should.
I always tell families is the most important thing about a home fire escape plan is having a meeting place. Everyone needs to know where the meeting place is. So let's just say we show up to a house fire, and the mother and son are out front, and we say, "Is anyone else inside?" Yeah, my husband and daughter are still in the house because they're the other family members. So now we're thinking, okay, someone's trapped, someone's in this house. Okay, it just escalates things.
Yeah.
A lot more. Then you come to find out, partway as you're going in, trying to think you got people. They're in the backyard.
Because they're 2 separate places.
Two separate, because they went out the back.
Yep.
So if you do anything, is have a meeting place.
I'm going to do that today.
Yeah, have that meeting place. If you have a big oak tree or if you have something,
Yeah.
your neighbor's house.
Fire pit, whatever.
This is it. You
That's
just
probably a
got-
bad one. Huh?
Yeah.
If it's a fire, go to the fire pit? No.
Yep.
So,
So
all right.
So you just got to make sure that whatever your meeting place isn't something like a car that may not be there the next day.
That's
Hey, we'll meet out at the car. Okay, well, you know what? That day, it's not there, or whatever.
Right.
So it is important to do that.
Well, I'll tell you what, while you're gathering your thoughts,
Yep.
I'm going to have us do public service announcements. So I'd like to give a shout out to Roy Cohen. He's out back, not only with a thank you for all his hard work, Leo McGowan also doing a great job in the background for us as the cameraman. We've got Dave Young out back, Jeff Pickett helps out. So let's move to the public service announcements as we say thank you to them.
Hi, it's Gary LaPierre, and the crew wants to thank Maxie's Delicatessen. That's at 117 Sharon Street in Stoughton. They're 781-341-1662. American Cancer Society, yes, they're looking for volunteers. Drive cancer patients to and from their treatments. 1-800-ACS-6662, or just go to www.cancer.org. Ilsa Mark's Food Pantry in St. Anthony's Free Market, 2 Park Avenue in Stoughton. For more information, call Christine Gallagher. That's at 781-341-0611 or 781-341-0549. Meals on Wheels. Just ask for Jessica. You'll find her at 781-344-8882, extension 2. Stoughton Penny Saver. Our business is advertising your business, they tell us. 27 Rose Glen Street, Stoughton, 781-344-4833. Community Forum showtimes in Stoughton. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 6 p.m., Monday at 8 p.m., Tuesday at 5 p.m., It's on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 28. All comments and suggestions welcome. Contact us at communityforum1@yahoo.com. Samaritans, they're at 41 West Street on the 4th floor in Boston, 02111. Their phone number is 617-536-2460. 24-hour helplines for Samaritans, and the number is 877-870-HOPE. That's 877-870-4673. Samaritans, you can find them at 800-252-TEEN. That's 252-8336. Or find them online at SamaritansHope.org.
And we're back here in studio with the Stoughton Fire Department's Chief, Mike Laracy, giving us a great rundown of the kind of things that you do here. And I think, is there any other PSAs for us, Roy? So the Stoughton Fire Department's at 1550, here we are, Central Street. And then we have, want to share with you Stoughton's own cooking show called Get Fresh. New episodes are coming soon. Comcast Channel 9, Verizon Channel 28, Mondays at 5:30 and Wednesdays at 8 p.m., Thursdays 9 a.m., and Fridays at 5 p.m. Also the Hometown Business Show. And by the way, this is a show that Stoughton Media Access Cable puts on for businesses here in Stoughton that would like to get on the show and tell people what they do. So please contact us, contact Roy Cohen or the people here at the studio. And we run that show Tuesdays at 11 a.m., Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m., Thursdays at 8 p.m., and Sundays at 7. And that's on Comcast 9 and Verizon 28. And we also want to tell you the We Are United show, all right, which is a wonderful show. Mondays at 5, Tuesdays at 9, Wednesdays at 8:30, Fridays at 11, Comcast 9 and Verizon 28. So you want to kind of look at these shows and they can share with you all kinds of good information that's local. There's also at the Harvest Torah Congregation, 1179 Central Street in Stoughton, Monday night bingo. If you like bingo, it's a great place to go, good friends down there. It's a wonderful congregation, very inclusive. So you just go down there and enjoy yourself. The doors open at 4:30 on Mondays. The games start at 6:30, and you'll have a great deal of fun down there.
Hi, it's Gary
And then we always
LaPierre,
like to
and the
thank
crew wants to thank...
Maxie's Deli. And that's for helping us out, always being supportive of the Stoughton Media Access Cable's Community Forum show. So I think we can come back here in studio. And Chief, I wanted to round out by a couple of last sort of minute safety tips that you wanted to share with us. So please.
Yep, with everything we talked about, the thing that I want to stress the most is the importance of smoke detectors, working smoke detectors in your home. not just detectors.
There are a lot of old, not working smoke detectors. I agree.
Yeah,
with you.
exactly. And carbon monoxide detectors. So in 2006, it was required that every home had a carbon monoxide detector on what they call every habitable floor.
Okay.
So, if your basement is finished, that's a habitable floor. If your basement is unfinished, but you have like a little rug down there with a TV room, it's still habitable.
Well, what's the harm in having it in the basement anyways?
Absolutely.
So
if you have one, you have one on each level. People always ask us, well, can I use a plug-in one? Plug it into an outlet. Where can I place it? Where on the wall can I place it? The thing with carbon monoxide, it's the same weight as air. So, like a smoke detector, they tell you they want it at the ceiling.
Okay.
They want it at least, if you're going to put it on the wall, it has to be at least 4 inches down from the wall, because we talked about the bank and down. Mm-hmm. So there's certain requirements, but with the carbon monoxide detector, you can put them anywhere. So if you want to buy a plug-in one, that's fine.
And they don't cost that much.
It depends on what you buy. So if you buy the plug-in one with a battery backup and with a digital read and that will display the carbon monoxide levels,
yep.
You're talking $40, $50. If you just want to buy a regular battery one, you're probably talking $15.
Right.
So, and that's your option. You can do a carbon monoxide battery operated carbon monoxide detector.
Do you need more than one on a floor if there's different sections?
No, what you really want to do is you want to have it within 10 feet, if you can, of all bedrooms.
Okay.
So you just want it close. Okay. So now you talk about smoke detectors, and it depends on when your house was built. And I'm trying to remember the dates. If your house required that your smoke detectors be hardwired, okay, they have to remain hardwired. We'll go in and do inspections when someone's selling their homes, because that's when we check for smoke detectors. The bank requires it. And they'll say, well, you know, can I replace this hardwired smoke detector with a battery? Or can I add a battery smoke detector here? No, if it's hardwired, the code required it. Remember, we went back to pre-existing, what was required at the time of the code, you have to put it in. So, but we definitely want a smoke detector outside the bedrooms, within 10 feet. If you have a hardwired system, most likely they're already hardwired into the bedrooms.
Okay.
So you're all set. There's two types of smoke detectors. There's photoelectric, what they call, and ionization. In photoelectric, if I'm trying to remember it right, it actually has like a photoelectric beam running between two contacts. And when the smoke gets in there, it breaks the beam and sets off the alarm.
Right.
Okay. The ionization, actually, the smoke, you get the two contacts, the smoke comes into that. The ionization within the smoke particles builds up, and it makes the connection.
Right.
So with that being said, if you're going out to buy a new smoke detector, buy a photoelectric, because it's a quicker acting smoke detector,
Okay.
and you can put it, you know, it's not going to be activated if you open the door to your bathroom after a shower, and it will prevent false alarms.
So the photoelectric's a little better.
Photoelectric, yep.
Right. Well, Chief, I want to thank you for coming in, sharing some great information about safety, great information about how you guys interact with the codes, all right? And I want to encourage everybody at home, you want to think about, one of the things the Chief asked us to think about is to have a place, a centrally located place that you can have your family go to, so that when the fire department arrives, they're not chasing around.
Absolutely.
All right, so thanks for being on the show. I want to thank Leo McGowan in the background, Roy Cohen for his excellent directing. All right, and thank you all for watching.